Okay, here's a video comment that I really love this. I made a video called DNA test results review, why my dad is 99% the same, but my mother is very ethnically mixed. I love this comment. If I'm pronouncing it right, it's going to be Aquino Retro. I don't know. Forgive me for not knowing how to pronounce that. It's kind of a long comment, but man, it sheds some light on this. I think it's a perfect commentary on the video I had made. Check this out. Quote, I think you more or less have it. Your mom's paternal side is from Italy, that is to say the Mediterranean, which is arguably the most diverse place in the old world of Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's a crossroads, a melting pot, yet at the same time intensely local. If you look, on the other hand, at people who get DNA tested from China or Japan or Norway, or many places that are not historic crossroads, then you find the same level of purity with your father, because again, my dad's 99% Northwestern European. Mainly British. And since white Americans had such strong notions of racial purity and taboos against marrying outside of the race, it's not surprising that his family, even after 300 years here, because the Shells came here in 1700, literally exactly the year 1700, even after 300 years here, they married among whites, which is to say Northern Europeans of Protestant origins. With your mother's family, your Italian American grandfather, as the child of immigrants, which he was, because my Italian great-grandfather came here in 1910, I believe was the year. It says he would have been very likely to marry another child of Italian immigrants based on the data. However, when Italians didn't marry other Italians, they tended to marry other Catholics, hence your Mexican grandmother, and both would have shared some general cultural bearings as Latin people. At the end of the day, love and attraction pushes humanity forward, and temporal notions of race and identity shouldn't hold us back from falling in love, end quote. He wins an award for this. I love this comment. I love it. That's awesome commentary. And so just, it is interesting, and he makes some good points in there too. So think about this. So my Mexican grandma, whose parents moved from Michoacan, Mexico, and forgive me for mispronouncing that, because she didn't even speak Spanish. She wasn't allowed to speak Spanish in her home because they wanted her to become Americanized, so they wouldn't let her speak Spanish in the home. So she became very culturally American despite her parents being born in Mexico. Buffalo, New York is where they moved. And then she graduated high school age 18. Meanwhile, my Italian grandfather, whose parents were also not born here, he was another son of immigrants, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where he joined the military, U.S. military, and the Korean War was going on. He was stationed in South Carolina, where he was stationed with a Mexican American who says, hey, I have a sister that just graduated high school. Are you looking for a wife? So sure enough, letters are written, photos are exchanged. And it's funny hearing my Mexican grandma tell this story. She said, yeah, I saw this picture of this Italian guy with a really big nose. And that's how she described it. But they ended up meeting. He ended up going to Buffalo. They ended up meeting and getting married. And, I'm here, because of that random thing that happened. But I think there's a good point there, that even the fact that there's somewhat of a similarity on the cultures, being immigrant, first generation Americans, having parents that were immigrants, and then also having somewhat of a similar background in that, in addition to being immigrant sons and daughters of immigrants, yeah, the religion that's going to matter, them both being Catholic. Now, when it all was said and done, though, here's I guess the ironic twist of this story, is that my grandfather ended up converting as an adult, already having 4 kids and being married. He converted to being Protestant as an adult, probably about my age. And so the family converted to being Protestant. They moved from Buffalo, New York, down to the south in Alabama, where I grew up, where my dad was being raised as Protestant. They met at the same church. They met at a Protestant church, and as teenagers, and then in their early 20s got married. Or my mom was 19, my dad was 20 when they got married. So it's funny how religion really did play a big part in not only my grandparents getting together, but also my parents. Had both of my grandparents not been Catholic, there's a good chance they wouldn't have ended up together. Had they not both been first generation Americans having parents that were immigrants, there's a good chance they wouldn't have ended up together. But then you move that down to the South in the 70s, and now they meet because they're not Catholic, but instead because they're Protestant. So it's interesting. These little details that may not seem important are actually crucial in my existence. Not only would I not be making this video, you wouldn't be watching it. I would not exist if it weren't for those little cultural things that brought my grandparents together, being first generation Americans, and then ultimately the converting religions, or to some degree converting, so that then my parents meet in the South in the 70s, and then the early 80s I'm born. Isn't that fascinating? I think this is one of the coolest videos I made on this channel so far. What do you think?